You're listening to the Lou Stokes podcast. Real and inspiring conversations with individuals from all over the world, sharing their insights on sustainability, fashion, conscious consumerism, and empowerment. Be inspired to take action and be the change you want to see in the world. Hey, and welcome to the Lou Stokes podcast. I'm very lucky to have the wonderful Christine Noonan with me today. Christine is from Limerick, Ireland. She's a fashion tech founder. Welcome, Christine. Thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing really, really well. I am very, very busy, like I said earlier. And however, I'm actually taking it all in my stride. So yeah, I feel light today for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, I like that. That's really nice. So thank you for taking the time to come on and chat with me. I'm excited to delve in. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you and about your background and how you ended up, let's say, in sustainable fashion technology.
Woo, okay. So a little bit about something really strange actually recently is people keep asking me, I keep being asked about my background and I keep answering this question all the time, but for some reason, every time it's asked, I'm like, ooh, like what? Anyway, so I as you said, I'm from Limerick, Ireland. My kind of like obsession with fashion started when I was a teenager, like very sort of like young. I grew up in foster care, and a huge sort of like, I was sort of moved to like the middle of nowhere, some like Irish village. And I was sort of like the only Black child in this like school that was like 360 years old, and essentially a lot of my kind of like schoolmates maybe like grew up together and like they just sort of like already had something like connecting them. And as a young teenager growing up, like fashion was sort of like my ease, like it was sort of like the way I was able to connect with the world around me like really easy, because fashion, you know, like a nice dress is a nice dress, like you can all appreciate it, right? So, and I remember with my foster sisters, they would be getting ready to go out on a night out and they would ask for my opinion, like, you know, what's good and all of that kind of stuff. So very quickly it was sort of like a medium for me to kind of connect with the world around me. And my love for it has very much to do with people and how they wear it and how they express themselves in it. I'm not very interested in, you know, like the high end and like, you know, like being, you know, like the next Anna Wintour or anything like that.
Right,
You know, like my association is very much in the everyday, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of what was the beginning. And then everything I've kind of done since then has been, how do I get closer to that? And how do I basically go into people's wardrobes?
Have a look at what they've got in there. Yeah, that's definitely a fun part. Definitely enjoy doing that.
So then I went to college and I studied economics, and then I founded the Fashion Society in university, and I ended up like spending more time, you know, doing events for the Fashion Society than actually in class.
Natural entrepreneur from the beginning, right?
So I remember specifically there was one paper that was due, and one of my lecturers was actually a very well known sort of like economist in Ireland. He's doing something now, I've forgotten, but he was our lecturer and like, it was really tough. And we had an exam or a paper that was due, and I genuinely completely forgot about it because I just like organized the biggest fashion show that like we like sold out at like almost 400 people, and all my time was taken doing that. And I remember I went up to him, like I genuinely cried because he would fail you and like you have to repeat it over again. And I was like, I'm so sorry, like I don't even have an excuse. I was like, we had a fashion show. Like he was like, okay, what? So I did my best to graduate, and I did, and then I went straight working for a fashion company in the US. Yeah, then once I did that, and I was very, very intrigued, honestly, by how people kind of express themselves in their clothes, how they buy them. So I was always the go-to person for like customer insights, and I would check all those data points and stuff like that. And then I went on to work with Zalando as a fashion buyer for them. And I know it comes up for me that, oh, like if you're into sustainability, if you say like, why were you working with like the biggest, sort of like one of the biggest kind of like fast fashion kind of pumpers, I guess, in the world, is what that one is. But my philosophy has always been to, if you want to change something or make something better, you have to deeply understand it and how it works.
Right. Good point.
Yeah. So,
point,
working with those fashion brands at Zalando and like buying them and kind of seeing how people were, kind of responding to the products that we were selling them and stuff, that was very crucial into kind of creating what we're creating now with Klëm. And yeah, that has sort of like been my journey so far, honestly.
And so when you were at university, were you concerned about sustainability? Was that something you were really aware of?
So actually I did my, it's so funny because at the time it wasn't called fashion sustainability. Like, it wasn't a thing per se. I'm sure it was for some people, but for me, like, it wasn't, it wasn't something I was aware of. But I actually did my, university, my last thesis or whatever you call it, my paper on, a fashion rental website. We actually, and it was also secondhand, so we actually called it student marketplace. It was, the student marketplace. Nice. I could have had like a more fashiony name, but you could call it SMAP.
Yeah, I like that.
No, it sounds like some sort of like printing company. But basically, the idea behind it was, I used to see that we used to always have these parties and like university balls and stuff. And, often like we would buy something and never really want to wear it again. Or like we would sort of like, scrum at the last minute to get something for an event. So I figured that for my last project in university and like my final paper, like I would do it around creating a business. So it was so funny because now I think back at how all the dots are connected. I literally did set it up. So I set up the actual website, set up the business. I went and tried to get a loan from a bank. Wow. I didn't know what I was going to do with that money, but like I did. and I had some of my friends, like they did like photo shoots for the photos that we would put up, went to as many people as I could find who kind of would sell their clothes on the website. Nice. And yeah, so like I literally, like I did that like way back when, and I had no idea, like at the time, for me, it was very much about kind of getting more use out of what you already have. And for the people who are giving us the clothes, it was for them to kind of, if you're not using something, someone else should use it, and then you can get paid for it or get money for it. So getting value, essentially,
yeah. Yeah, exchanging, right?
Yeah.
So that something stays, in the loop, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was there a pivotal moment when you decided to leave your corporate fashion job and go and do your own thing? And we'll talk about Klëm in a moment, so you can explain about that. But was there anything that you specific, or was it just like, I need to move on now?
I think I always knew that eventually I would start my own company. And so I actually structured my career very much to prepare me for that. Right. So I try to expose myself to opportunities where I would learn and sort of like create this sort of like clear path into, creating someday, having a company and bringing value in different ways than, just sort of like being employed. And I was also not a very good employee. Like I was as a high performer, tough, but like I was pretty tough to manage because I always found it very hard to do things for the sake of doing them.
Right.
And when I was sort of like coming up in my career, like, you know, I remember one time I was like just, you know, not just, but like I was a junior, like sort of like customer service agent, and I was working in this environment that was massively, massively wasteful in terms of like time resources, like everything just needed to be streamlined. And I spoke up a couple of times, and like my manager, I would say like she would go home to sleep at night and be like, oh my God, could she just answer the phone and shut up? It's like, please. So when I realized that like I'm not very good at being managed in a system where I feel like I can't really change much, I sort of like, I was like, okay, that's, you know, so everything we do going forward needs to be, you know, exposing myself to how do I create something of my own someday. And I knew it was never going to be easy. And I knew that, you know, taking this path was going to be, you know, very, very tough. And it has been, but it's also the most fulfilled I've ever been in my life, weirdly.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, doing your own thing and doing something that feels meaningful to you and that is important to you and has an impact on other people's lives. I think there's nothing more fulfilling than that, right? Than just like going to work, doing the same old for a paycheck. It's like, and obviously it's not easy to break away because we've kind of been brainwashed that that's how
oh my God,
we're meant to live, right? And it's like, no, there are other ways. So you know, congratulations for doing that. And you were obviously, you know, born an entrepreneur because at university you're already, you know, doing fashion shows. Honestly, and then you had the idea of the rental. I mean,
I always ask myself, like, I have no idea how I survived in the corporate world for as long as I did. But I think what I tried to sort of like do, I've always, and like in most of my life and everything I sort of do, like I like to be quite like robust, and I also try to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing and making sure I'm not just following some random, you know, like I'm not just doing something because maybe it feels like good for the sake of it, and like it's, so everything has to be serving some sort of like a higher purpose. So, and if it's not, then it better not be bad for my mental health. Then, you know, like it has to be connected to some sort of thing. And so most of my career, like I've met some incredible people, and a lot of what I've been like, a lot of what I'm doing now feels a little bit easier than it probably would have if I hadn't, you know, worked my way up to like where I worked my way up to. And I also had incredible audacity. Like I honestly, like I was like a junior employee one time in one company, and we had like these, like I was in charge of sort of like the highest spending customers. And so if you spend so much on the website, you were entered into this like part of the loyalty program, which gave you someone like me to take care of your wardrobe, your purchases and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, and these were people who were spending like millions on the site, right? Wow. So yeah, like my job was to make sure they were always happy. So a lot of them were like this American, because it was an American company. So they were all like this like American business women, just like messaging me on a Saturday, drinking a cocktail, asking me if they should buy the Chanel bag.
Gosh, what a big problem.
Yeah, and then sometimes being like, oh, you should get the pink one. And I'm like, okay, sure. Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Yeah, but so essentially what was happening though, that was once a customer came into that part of the loyalty program, which is sort of like the top tier, I emailed them and told them about like me and how I can help them, etc. But there was no other way for them to find out about this, right? So we had a lot of people that never looked at their emails, which meant that the engagement we had was a lot less than we could have had if there was a way they went on the site and they could see that they're part of this program and see the benefits. So I go into to my manager and I'm like, hey, we need to create this like landing page that's specific to this group of customers. And they were like, I know. They were like, what are you talking about? You know, the company has bigger things. And I was like, yeah, but like these people spend millions, right?
Yeah.
Went into the tech, I went into the tech office, which was a bunch of lads and maybe like one girl. And then like I went in there and I had a presentation and I showed them about the work I was doing and the customers and run them through like why it's important to get more of them engaging with the program. And the tech guys were like, whoa, like they could not believe this. So they ended up actually, in the end, we did end up creating they coded the page and the page went up and the company made millions of money. I think I was like 23. I was just like,
wow, look at you. That's amazing.
But it was like, this audacity to just, speak up and people kind of looking at me being like, who do you think you are? And then I'm always just kind of like, I don't know, like me, like, I don't know. It doesn't really matter, does it? Like, it's just like...
yeah, like I'm just showing you an opportunity that you're not seeing. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Fantastic. Yeah. So why don't you tell our listeners a bit, Christine, about Klëm and like, so you're at Zalando, you left, and now you're on this, path as a fashion tech owner. CEO.
CEO. Oh my God.
Talk to us about Klëm.
Yeah. So Klëm is an AI that we're building, and she is essentially a wardrobe consultant. And basically similar to, I guess, like Alexa, but for your wardrobe. Except Klëm doesn't, communicate via voice. It's very much image and text. So the first iteration of what we're doing is called Ask Klëm, and you take a quick photo of something and you say where you want to wear it, and Klëm kind of like creates outfits, sort of like to kind of show you what way to wear that. And a lot of it is kind of like emulating like typical, if as a wardrobe consultant, someone comes to me and is like, hey, how could I wear this? And then I can sort of show them, it's a very sort of like similar process. And essentially what we want to be able to do is that with the clothes you already have, Klëm can sort of like help you recognize like ways of wearing them that probably maybe you haven't. And essentially in the next iteration, you'll be able to add more images from your wardrobe and then link it to your calendar. And, if you have a meeting coming up, Klëm knows. So first thing in the morning, she sends you like a quick thing to say, hey, I have your outfit together for the day. And then you go and pick one that you want. But the bigger version of it is, so initially she's like learning about your style and like what you like and all of that kind of stuff, what you already have. And then we are creating this sort of like ecosystem of services as well. So to make it as easy as possible for you to access any service you want. So if you want like a real life, like wardrobe consultant to come into your wardrobe, if you want to repair something, if you want to dry clean something, whatever you want that has to do with clothing, like she becomes a sort of like search engine for like what's the closest and most convenient way to do that. And basically we're calling it like a fashion super app. So it's like this like big, massive idea, but ultimately for the customer, it's that, it's to take away any sort of like headaches or kind of like overthinking or any sort of like kind of like stress that comes with like being a human being that wears clothes, essentially.
Right, yeah. No, I love it because, when I don't do styling as much now because I'm more into the sustainable fashion education and consulting, but occasionally I still do it. And when I did do it, what most people came to me with was just overwhelm and not knowing how to wear what they've already got. And I remember going to their houses and being like, wow, they had so much stuff. And a lot of it was really similar. Yeah. Because often they're going out and buying the same kind of similar thing and they can't remember what they've got in their closet. And so it's like they get home and like, oh, I've got something similar to that. So you'd see like a very similar kind of black shirt or top. You'd be like, you've actually got 10 of these. Like, yeah. And then it would just be like, oh, I'm got this, or I've got this event or this meeting, I need to go and buy something new, instead of like using what they already have, because it was so disjointed because of the overwhelm and not knowing where to start. I find with personal style, a lot of people, it doesn't come naturally to them maybe, so it's just like they don't really know where to start. And so, you know, having something like this, I think, is going to be incredibly popular, because that was one of the main problems that I would hear, is like, I've got all these clothes and I feel like I've got nothing to wear.
I've got nothing, And I think in that process as well, when someone is looking at their wardrobe and saying they have nothing to wear, which obviously is never true, right?
Right.
This is when then they're going to go out and buy more, because when you see something shiny and new, like it promises you a future that you don't think you already have,
right.
like existing in your current wardrobe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's so true. Like when you go and buy something new, there is like this kind of, it's like a sugar rush. Yeah. Right. And then you get home and after a few days, you've kind of forgotten about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we actually want to do with Klëm as well is to kind of like find ways of emulating that sort of process of discovery that when you first, see an outfit somewhere, you're like, whoa, right? So we're kind of trying to figure out ways of like gamifying some of the process and kind of like making it feel light. So like Klëm isn't really like your, like, I don't know, grandma, like forcing you to like be better at your blah, 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 right? Like she's more like kind of like, if your stylish friend was nice enough to give you her time, in like organizing your wardrobe and like making these things feel a little bit more palatable for you. That's sort of like the approach we're kind of taking. And, we're not like pointing at you and be like, oh my God, like, stop with the fast fashion, like stop, blah, blah, blah. Like it's very much, we want to understand where your weak points are, and then for Klëm to kind of show up for those times, right? And essentially kind of guide you to have a much more streamlined sort of like process with how you think about these things,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's great. And it's funny because I was remembering, I think it was yesterday, about that. I've seen this statistic in a few different places. I don't know who cited it, but it says we wear 20% of 80% of our wardrobe. And it's like, what? But then I sit and think about it and I think, well, yeah, actually probably like this winter I'm like wearing, or this, fall winter season, I'm only just wearing one coat at the moment. Like, can I just keep re-wearing it? Whereas maybe last year I was wearing a different one. And I'm like, oh, I have a lot of stuff. And often we want to buy something new, but then we forget that also our clothes also, they kind of go through phases with us as well. Like you can get tired of something and because you wear it so much because you loved it, whatever, and then you put it away, and maybe next year you don't bring it out, but then the following year you bring it out and you're like, oh yeah, I love this, it's like a new coat again. So it's kind of like, I think we've got into this mentality of like, no, I don't like that anymore, I'm going to get rid of it, and then I'm going to go and buy something new because I can buy a new coat for €50. Right. And I think that is one of the biggest problems with the fast fashion industry. It's kind of devalued clothing. Like clothes should not be, like a t-shirt should not cost €5. Like it's worth way more than that if you really dissect the supply chain. And really think about like where it's come from, what it's made of, who made it, how they made it, then the transport, the store, then the model. Then it's like when you really sit and think about it, it's like, it can't possibly, like, it has to be more expensive because someone's suffering along the way, right? And
no, absolutely. Like, I absolutely agree. And I actually remember, even like as a fashion buyer, like the process and like the stress, like I would go through, procuring like next season's, items that are going to be sold on the site, and the Excel sheets that like I would fill in like manually a lot of the time and this kind of stuff. And, and that entire process like starts from the very beginning when someone designs the item, they draw it up, make it etc. Like it goes to the factory, and now it comes over to the sales associate at the brand having a meeting with me picking which ones we're going to sell, then that item being photographed for the website, And then, the engineers who are working on the website to make it possible for you to shop it. And then by the time you get to it, so many people have sort of like been involved in like that process that the idea that you would buy it and, it gets like a little bit of whatever and you just throw it away. It just sounds, it seems like a little bit, like insane. And I definitely think that it's this sort of like lack of respect for the process of what it takes. And, like a single t-shirt, for example, is like 3,000 something liters of water to make, right? So the idea of it just being, whatever, it just, like does not sit very well with me.
No, it's, we've just kind of been, brainwashed into this throwaway culture, and not just with clothes. I think with a lot of stuff, right? It's not just with clothes.
Sometimes even our relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh, I don't like that anymore. Today I don't like that.
Yeah, it's like Tinder. So Tinder is the Shein of relationships.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true. Swipe. No, I don't like that one. Yeah. It's kind of, it does sometimes. When I stop and think about it, I think, wow, how much progression we've made as human beings and the human evolution. But at the same time, it's like we've gone forward, but we've also gone backward in certain things.
I mostly think it's a lot to do with, I think every time there's like major leaps and bounds in how we do things, like there's always like that moment of going a little bit back, because it's kind of like, whoa, like you look how far you've come and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
So I think there's like a little bit of that. But then I also think in general, like when it comes to fashion, especially, the message hasn't really spread and sunk in very widely yet, right? So I talk to people and they're like, the entire idea of how fast fashion operates and all of that, like for them, they're like, what? Like they're finding out for the first time. And like, in my brain, I'm like, are you what? But like, this is just the process. And that is because everyone is sort of like, we live in this sort of like siloed, we're all kind of siloed into our own lives, and like there's only so much you can care about all at once. Which is why like I don't feel upset that people still buy fast fashion or whatever. Like I'm always more than happy to like educate them or whatever, because I understand that there's so much going on all the time, and like you can't be doing good with every single aspect of your life like all the time, right? So
absolutely. It's like I think it's the most important thing is awareness. And when you do become aware of it, and like it's important not to shame people like that are buying fast fashion, because most of them don't really know, and often they think, oh, this brand brought out a sustainable line, so I feel like I'm doing something good now. Like, some of my friends have said that to me, and I'm like, well, no,
no.
really. But, and here's why. And so I'll explain to them, and they're like, oh, okay. But, if I hadn't have had that conversation, they wouldn't know. So it's like, they think they're doing good.
Yeah.
And we're really, okay, yes. But, and like you said, it's like, it's not like, we can't be perfect. It's like, for me, it's all about trying to do the best you can. And, maybe that's just like deciding not to buy fast fashion or certain brands, or and going and looking at secondhand apps, or for purchasing, or thrifting, or vintage. And I get it takes more work in a way, especially if like we said, personal, our style doesn't always come naturally to everyone. But it's like, it is a journey, and I always try to help people to understand it's not like you have to go and throw away all your wardrobe because you've got H&M, Zara and Shein and those brands. No, it's like, wear what you have first. If you're going to buy something new, think about it.
Yeah.
Like choose alternatives, go to a sustainable brand, spend less money on fast fashion and buy one thing in a sustainable brand and some secondhand, you know. But again, it's a mindset shift, isn't it?
Absolutely, mindset shift. I actually also think there is also something to be said for the creative direction of a lot of like secondhand apps and like websites and all that kind of stuff, because oh my god, they're all gonna come for me. But honestly, like I feel like a lot of the time when I see some sort of like ad for like some secondhand website or whatever, the images and like just like the entire kind of user experience just looks very, very clunky. It always reminds me of, you know, going into a charity shop and everything is all over the place and it's all over the place and it looks quite ugly. And like, I have to mentally be prepared to like dive in and like find what I'm looking for.
Right. And rummage.
And rummage, right? Which I've done that, but like, I have to be genuinely that this is what I want to do for that day. And it's like a fun thing for me to do and discover all these things. And I think if I want to generally shop secondhand properly, especially online, I need to have a very similar experience to how I would buy new, right? So maybe that doesn't mean that, you know, they put them on models and stuff that would defeat the purpose. It could just be that maybe they try to retain the original images for some of these things and then show like the real image in real time, like on the second thingy. Maybe the product discovery is a little bit easier and like the navigation is a little bit easier. I always almost like find these websites like they're treating it like as if, oh my God, this is gonna come for me, but like they try to treat like they don't take it very, very seriously, like, and it's almost kind of like, oh, like we have all of these clothes and like, you know, people should just come and find them and blah blah blah, and like there isn't this trying to understand how a customer typically is trying to make these decisions. There's something in when you're creating a new product, and it's essentially like if you're creating something that's new, you typically have to make it feel very similar to something that people already kind of like use, because otherwise you're trying to also educate them. So you're not just trying to give them this, you know, new product. You're also trying to like get their minds to figure out how, like, whatever way your site works or whatever it is. And I think this is such an issue. Like, I think, which is why, you know, the likes of like Zalando, for example, like having, they have like a secondhand platform now and stuff. And for me, you know, I left Zalando for different reasons and etc. But like, for me, it's a much better experience, like buying secondhand on Zalando, because they generally treat it very much like the newer stuff, right? It's just a very similar experience.
Yeah, it's important, actually. You're right, because often people can get really, overwhelmed looking at online for secondhand, because they're like, well, you know, often the pictures, especially the apps where it's just like peer-to-peer kind of selling, and people just put any kind of photo, and then they're like, you look at it and you're like, if you know, then you're like, okay, well, in that light or whatever, it doesn't look that great, but whatever, you know, or you know that brand or whatever. But if you're just like, you know, looking, often, like you said, the images can just you know, not be appeasing or attractive. So immediately you're like, doesn't look very nice, like that. Yes, absolutely. I do think there's definitely room for development on that. And like you said, why shouldn't consumers or customers be treated the same, even if they're buying secondhand? They should be getting the same experience, like on Zalando. So interesting point.
I actually had an idea before, because for whatever reason, I'm a house of ideas, but I had an idea before about for fashion, especially for sort of like rental peer-to-peer, and also kind of like buying secondhand, where we would start with so instead of you going on a website and having to filter out what could suit you, it could basically be that we find different people who are similar to your body shape and your body type and maybe like style, whatever. And then you kind of create this community where that like you kind of like shop like based on so like there's this like sort of like little subcultures for different brands and stuff, and we're probably going to do something like this on Klëm at some point, where like wardrobes or like body shapes or types and likes like similar to yours, you kind of can access these people's wardrobes, and perhaps, you know, they can rent stuff out to you, or like maybe you can like buy stuff from them and stuff like that. But like I really, because it's especially for women, like I feel like people almost always want to know people who kind of like look like them or have a similar build. Like, what do you wear that you feel really good in, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think when,
so I guess as well, it's really helpful for someone that's like, you know, maybe feels a bit more shy with their personal style, but they look at someone else and they're like, I love that, and they feel like they identify that person, and interesting. That I think that's a great idea. Like creating these subcultures, like communities of people. And honestly, fun too.
I honestly like I thought about it, and then I was like, every time now I have like some sort of like fashion idea, I'm like, Klëm will do.
Klem's just gonna be the place to go.
I keep imagining like if Klëm were a person, you know, like if you're in a meeting with your boss and like the client says something and your boss is like, oh, she'll like, you know, she'll take care of it, and you're like, what? Like I don't have what? I feel like this is how Klëm, wherever she is, every time I'm like, yeah, we're gonna be able to do this on Klëm. She's like, no, we're not.
She's probably thinking, what? Another thing? Oh God. I love it. Klëm, it does feel like she's a person.
Yeah. It's
Totally.
actually been interesting because I kind of like liked the idea of her. Of course, like she's a computer and all of that, but I'm also very aware of people being afraid of like AI and how, you know, this kind of like plays out in the future. You know, some Black Mirror episode essentially like playing out. And I'm very, very aware of this fear, because I also sometimes like when I look at AI developments, I'm like, this is really, really cool. But I'm also kind of like, this back of my head, I'm just like imagining some random like robot, like, you know, coming into my house, knocking.
It is a little bit freaky as well. Yeah, it's like it blows your mind, and then you're like, "Ooh, actually, I mean, it's incredible."
It's a little bit too smart. Like I don't know, but so we're trying to figure out. Obviously, even in our as the guys, I don't code at all, like my team does, and we're kind of trying to be as ethical about the whole process as possible, and making sure she's rewarded for good behavior. And good behavior is basically like staying in line with what she's being asked to do, because right now she's very much, it's like a rules-based thing, right? So we say this and this, go with this and this, etc. And then as time goes on, she'll be able to make these predictions herself. And the idea is that we constantly make sure she's, you know, once she does something that's like we make sure to keep rewarding. And that's how we make sure that she doesn't go off and like, I don't know, do something random. Like come and steal your
tangent.
I don't know. Come and like seduce your husband on his phone. Like, I don't know. But basically, we're very careful in creating parameters that make it impossible for her to imagine anything else, you know, needing to partake in any other kind of like activity other than just organizing wardrobes.
Right. Yeah, I've got you. Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is all you're here to do.
How exciting. It's really exciting. So, Christine, how do you envision the future of fashion?
Ooh. So, I think that, I think it's definitely going to become a little bit more streamlined for sure. Mm-hmm. I imagine that a lot of what comes with needing to be creative in your fashion and expression, I think, as much as I hate saying this word out loud, but the metaverse is probably going to play a huge part into the fact that you can go and express yourself there in a way that doesn't need you to like have a bunch of things produced just so you can wear something once and forget about it. So I have whatever reservations about the metaverse in general, but I really do think fashion wise, like this is going to be a very important thing. And then that will mean that our sort of like what we actually wear physically and stuff, there's probably going to be like a little bit less kind of like pressure perhaps to, but I don't know, like it's right now because there's so much happening in tech, and I feel like the people who are building fashion for the metaverse and stuff, I don't know how many of them are actually checking with real everyday customers to see how this is translating for them. I don't know how much of the metaverse is like outside of gamers and just people who think it's really cool and investors, right? So, because I think this is very important to kind of know for the everyday person how this is going to translate.
Right, absolutely.
And but I think it could be good if we listen and kind of try to understand how it fits and sits in everyday people's lives. But I think, so for example, for Klëm, we're building like the end goal of Klëm. So 10, 15 years from now will be that Klëm could be like a smart wardrobe, a smart closet, literally physically in your house. And she would be, basically helping you in your house in like real time. She could be in a changing room, like when you go to try something on and stuff, that like you're able, whatever is in the store is able to communicate directly with what you have, in your Klëm wardrobe. So, things that we cannot do ourselves is sort of like,
Would that be like through some form of blockchain or something that you could do that, or it's like AI?
Yeah, so like a little bit of both, essentially. So there's like a lot of talk about digitization of like fashion products, and there's already kind of like companies coming out and doing this, and essentially these fashion brands are now putting images on, of their items onto like sort of the blockchain, and also kind of like putting them in these libraries that, for example, if you bought something from Zara, like, I don't know, like 7 years ago, like if you were to try to scan the QR code on that item, like it wouldn't take you anywhere, because usually, like right now, for example, like a QR code on your Zara item, if you scan it, it takes you to the Zara's website of that item, right? So you can see the image there. But once it's wiped and like Zara isn't sending that item anymore, it doesn't send you anywhere. But what's being done now is databases are being created where those items will live forever, right? Yeah. Meaning that every single physical item in our world will have a digital version of it, like a digital twin, they're calling it.
Passport.
A passport, exactly. And I think the applications for that are like insane, like what we can do with that, right? So it's a really, like, I think it's a very exciting time, and I'm trying to be very open about how the future is going to look. And I have some ideas of where I would like them to go, but at the same time, I'm very down here in terms of making sure things make sense for the end customer, right? And the way we are innovating with Klëm is we ask people and we say, hey, like, it's essentially like if you had an assistant and, she gets better based on the requests that you make from her, right? So we're not just innovating a bunch of stuff and hoping people use them. The entire process is done that like people can request things of Klëm, and then as these requests come through, she gets smarter and her features kind of get, kind of better, essentially. So it's very customer centric.
Which is fantastic, because it's about solving problems for customers.
Yeah,
it's exciting. And who knows what, like you said, like tech is moving fast and there's so much going on and it's really exciting time. So who knows what, what's going to be around in 10 years time, right? What kind of innovations would have take place or, so
I think
it's exciting.
Definitely. But I also think that it's going to become so personalized, as in, I think what we have now, like where you go on a website and Zalando tells you, oh, like we recommend this for you or whatever. And you're like, I've never been here before. How do you know what I want?
Yeah.
What are you
talking? Listening.
But I think there was a time where they weren't even able to do that, right? Where they just had like a catalog and help people buy. And then there was a period there, like I think it was about 7 years ago or whatever, when buying instead of shopping was the thing. So personalization was like a huge thing in fashion. And now I think we're moving into this place of like hyper personalization where what I have in my closet you need to kind of figure out or know how that would go with what you're trying to sell me, and being able to tap into that like is super important to make me kind of like more kind of like sustainable in how like I kind of buy and stuff. So like I don't buy things that clearly will not go with what I have, right?
Yeah. It's like, I feel like there's like this educating consumers and helping them make the best decisions for planet and the people.
Yes.
For all, it's like for the higher good.
Yeah.
Not just the brand going, pay me money for that blank brand.
Yeah. Like that time
that's gone now. Yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone. It's like working together, like more community orientated than like just give to me and I'm going to keep chugging out more and more items and people are just going to keep buying and buying. No, it's like, no, let's actually do something together for a higher purpose.
That time is definitely going, like there's definitely a shift happening. And like it's so funny because when it comes, we've spoken to investors who've wanted to invest in Klëm and stuff, and the way they think about these things are very much, I do not want to be offend anyone, but they're very kind of like I'll tell them about what we're trying to do, and they're very much like, oh, like that's not gonna work, or like that's not gonna like they want to sort of like invest in kind of like the old way of how things are now, which is so interesting because it's like, if you're investing into a new company, you're investing into innovation and change. But I think fashion and how it works is very hard for a lot of people to kind of like grasp if they're not in the industry and if they're not sort of like in the know of how these things kind of work, right? So we definitely found that really hard, because investors kind of wanted to treat it like as if it's like any other, like it's like any other sort of like product or whatever, which is absolutely not true. Your fashion is a very personal thing, and you're telling people that you want to go into their wardrobes and help them with, like there's a lot of like kind of connotations around this. You have to be very careful with how you approach it. So we got off the investor train, and we were like, okay, we're not going to take an investment from anyone right now. We want to take our time in building something very useful for customers so that by the time we get outside investors, like they're investing in something that already exists that customers actually love, right? So that kind of really freed me, because now I feel like we can do whatever it is that will make sense for the people without worrying about getting someone back there, their millions.
And not worrying about someone understanding it or not. Exactly.
It was so frustrating, some of these meetings. Like there'll be investors, like one investor told me, they were like, no one cares about what they wear. And I was like,
oh, really?
Cool.
Oh, wow. I think a lot of people do. Like, a lot, yeah.
But the frustration, the frustration that comes with that. And when I first started, I was in this mindset of like, oh my God, like investors, like we need investors to like validate and all of that. And then I realized, I'm sorry, like I don't need people who don't understand what we're trying to do, validating what we're doing. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Now we are more kind of like customer focused and like seeking that validation more, which interestingly has meant that more investors are contacting us.
Wow, that's amazing. But I guess it's when you focus on what you're really passionate about and what you feel is true in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like you're being true to you and what you know and feel is right. And so it's like, yeah, it's the best way, because at the end of the day, you have to do what you know how to do best as well, right?
Yeah. And I think also it allows you, it sort of like opens you up to the right partners and like the people who really believe in what it is you're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And this thing, like, it goes for everything in life. It goes even for relationships. I don't know why I keep mentioning relationships. I'm happily married. But like, you know, like life is constantly about finding the things that like kind of go with whatever energy it is that you're trying to go into, you know, and you don't force things. And oh my God, since I turned 30 like this year, like I'm so happy within myself and like, you know, these realizations coming to me and how like there's nothing, I never force anything. And if things happen, amazing. You know, if they don't happen, like I don't freak out. I'm like, there's probably some sort of like reason, or maybe there's no reason, and that's also okay. You know, like it's,
you're just flowing. Yeah, you're in the flow. Yeah.
Oh my God, like I love it. And you know, there's like a part of me that's always like, is something bad gonna happen? Like, you know, it feels weird for me to be this content within myself. And so, you know, because my childhood obviously was pretty tough. So like I'm constantly just, not as much anymore, but there was a time I would constantly be like waiting for someone to like knock on the door and be like, okay, you've been happy for too long, like pack it up.
Yeah, or like not really, because sometimes, when you're in this state of flow and then you're like, oh, I thought this was meant to be hard.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just because we've been programmed to, you know, to believe that we have to work really hard and things have to be really hard. But why do they? Why can't they just flow? Why can't we just be open to and kind of, understand that things do happen for a reason and not necessarily always good, but then there's always kind of a silver lining.
Yeah. This is honestly my entire year this year. Like this is how it's all kind of like been. And there's also something to be said for showing up as yourself constantly and having that courage. And this is something I honestly didn't have for a really long time. And some people who know me would be like, oh, what? Like you were always blah, blah. And I'm like, I actually like struggled for a very long time to show up as myself. Because like I told you, like I was in like this school where I was like the only Black kid, generally like the only Black kid in the village as well. And there's a lot of like assimilation and wanting to be what the people around me would expect, that essentially like I create this other sort of like alter ego that showed up for some of these events and stuff. And a lot of work went into figuring out that like who I actually really am, and you know, going back to those basics, and then not being afraid for her to show up into the world. And so much has kind of like gone into motion since that happened. Just, you know, like I'm very much like, you take it or leave it, like, and it's okay, you know. So
absolutely. Exciting times for you, Christine. It's very exciting. So just to wrap up, we could talk for hours. When is Klëm due, like the first phase, or, you know, what are the timings? Just for, you know, I'm sure our listeners are going to be eager to get this. I know I will be, or I am, rather.
Yeah, so actually right now we have like a focus group of users. So like you can go on our website, www.klem.app, so KLEM, and you can actually join the waitlist. And then within the waitlist, we've created some sort of like a focus group of, we are calling them almost like co-creators who are working with us like closely, like every, I think it's like about 30 minutes per month, and kind of like testing whatever iteration we have out at that time. And we're hoping that all of this sort of like by January next year, like we'll be out of this phase, and hopefully by February or March, like Klëm will be like the first version, Ask Klëm, we're calling it, will be on the App Store, Android and Apple, for everyone to sort of like enjoy. And then And then it almost feels like, oh, and then everything is over. It's like, no, like then it's constant, you know, it's just like, yeah. But yeah, hopefully February or March of next year, like will be, available for all.
Exciting, very exciting time. So apart from obviously on the Klëm website, where can people find you online if they want to connect?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. So just my name. And it's Christine and then a dot and then a dash Noonan. You can tell like my combination was taken by like 100 people. I was trying to make it work.
I can put it in the show notes, don't worry. You don't tell it all out. Everyone, I can put your details in the show notes. But so you're on Instagram.
So I'm on Instagram and I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. Like on Instagram, actually, like I share a lot of my process on Instagram, and it's very, if you really would like to stalk me and potentially get information to cancel me with later, like it's like
I'm gonna stalk you.
It's like the best place. Because ever since I found myself, right, for some random reason, I'm obsessed with sharing this new me. I'm just like, look, and now I'm drinking a green smoothie, like what? So
Instagram, LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Kind of like,
amazing.
I was going to say Snapchat, but that's not true. It's on Snap.
Yeah, God, I think that's kind of not so popular now, is it?
No, I feel like Gen Z.
I've never been on it.
Yeah, like Gen Z is like, here, Snap. I'm like, what?
No, it's TikTok now.
TikTok. Oh my God. Are you on TikTok?
Yeah. Only this summer I started playing around with it.
You do that?
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to get really distracted. So I've got it like hidden in my phone so I don't see the application. So I'm not always looking on it because I do find these things really distracting. So I have to like put my phone on focus and stuff so it doesn't show me the app, you know, all that kind of thing that amazing Apple does. But yeah, I don't go on TikTok much because I'm not used to doing it. It's not a habit of mine, but it's kind of cool. I get why a lot of people are on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm like 42 now, so maybe it's not like so my generation, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's fun. I just look at it and see it as more fun. And what I do notice about TikTok, which I kind of feel is different about Instagram, is that it's not so curated aesthetically. True. Like it's a lot more like people are just coming on random. They're not really thinking about it. I know Instagram is a bit more like that, but it is still a little bit more curated. But yeah, there's lots of different social apps, so I try to minimize a little bit my time so I can be focused.
Yeah, I tried to like do TikTok, and then I think I'm a very easily distractible person. So I was like, okay, this is not going to happen. One, I cannot dance to save my life, and two, I don't have any other talent. Like I feel like TikTok is for like every time I'm on it and I see like super popular videos, a lot of the times like someone like weirdly talented at something very strange that you're like, right? And I feel honestly like outside of my work, like I generally feel like the least talented person I know in terms of like I cannot sing, although I know we're wrapping up. I tried to sing when I was in school, let me tell you. So when I was in that school I was telling you about in secondary school, right? I joined the school choir. And for some reason, I don't know if it was a diversity thing, for some reason, like they would give me lead on songs. So like I would like be the lead singer, right?
Nice.
So I grew up generally believing I could sing really well. and then I meet my husband, right? And a couple of years in, we were driving on a road trip and I was singing away, whatever. And then he just goes to me, you know what I found really cute about you? And I was like, oh, like what? And he was like, the way you cannot sing, but you sing anywhere.
And you were like, what? I thought I could sing. I thought I was brilliant at it.
I just never sang in public ever. Like I was able to look back and I was like, why did nobody tell me?
Probably because you were so into it and having so much fun. Who's going to tell you can't sing? No, honestly, I think that's what's beautiful about when someone's really enjoying something.
Oh God! Now I was like imagining all the teenage movies, right? Where like this one girl is like, And you're like,
what are you doing?
That was me. And my husband saved me from it. He generally thought I knew. Like he was like, you know, it's a cute quirk, you know. I was like, no, it's not.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Christine. It's been amazing. It's been great having you on.
Yeah.
Thank you to all our listeners for hanging out with us today and having a listen. Watch out for Klëm. It will be out soon. And join the waiting list if you're interested also as well for updates. And Christine, lovely to chat again. And I'll speak to you again soon.
Soon. You can stalk me on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm going to do that now.
Talk to you later.
Ciao. Bye-bye. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please subscribe to the Lou Stokes podcast. Rate and review in the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're tuning in from. I'd be so grateful. Also, check out the show notes to learn more about my guests and learn more about me on my website, www.loustokes.com. Until next time, be inspired, take action, and be the change you want to see in the world.